Einen wunderschönen guten Morgen und
Good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome to our virtual press conference on the FSB 2021. Welcome, thanks for joining us. I'm Alexander Königsmann, and I will lead you through this somewhat different press conference. Yesterday, we've already addressed one part of this double trade fair, the Aquanale, and learned what we will expect in October this year. And FSB will actually on the same level. Very happy that you're all with us, and I can still say that FSB is the leading trade fair in the industry. It is the most important industry appointment. May you be successful in open-air sports and exercising facilities. And it's only here that all market participants get an overview on what is new, technology, product innovation, process optimization, and visionary plannings. And this is why I'm so much looking forward to spend 30 to 45 minutes with you and share all information on this October trade fair. Before getting started, let's have a look at some impressions on FSB 2 years ago, 2019. So these were the impressions from FSB 2019, and today we'll be talking about FSB 2021. And I can well imagine that some may have some questions on all these subjects. Of course, we will have to address whether and how this trade fair can take place, and we would like to give you the possibility to ask questions. So you've got email addresses being sent for all German visitors on the press conferences, fsb.presse at kölnmesse.de, and for all foreign visitors, fsb.press at kölnmesse.com. So please bombard us with questions. We will answer all of them. But before that, I would like to welcome our visitors in the studio. First of all, Dr. Stefan Kannewischer, President of the IAKS, the International Association of Sports and Leisure Facilities, and Head of Department and responsible for FSB, Matthias Pollmann. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. Let's get started with the most important question. We just saw the images from 2019, so somewhat we're longing for something like that, and this trade fair might look a bit different than it was in 2019, or will it happen at all? Mr. Pollmann, of course, my most important answer, it will take place. You may already have listened yesterday, and I was saying the same thing on the Aquanale organization. Yes, we will get started with FSB and Aquanale because, well, I'll give you some reasons why this is feasible. 2019, FSB was one of the last trade fairs that was taking place before COVID-19. In February, March, everything stopped. And we're very positive, not only because we have a very comprehensive hygiene concept, but also because politics is also sending positive signals, in particular in North Rhine-Westphalia, as from an incident rate below 50, we can start with trade fairs. And today we are slightly above 19 in Germany, so we're far off the 50. Vaccination rates are increasing, and we're very positive that we can get started in October. This is good news. Dr. Kannewischer is also breathing deep and happily. It's the good news of the day, but you already said it. We have to take different measures into account this time. This will be a different trade fair as in 2019. Many things have to be taken into consideration, and it is also conceivable that some people may have some concerns whether they would like to go on a trade fair. What are the framework conditions once it happens? It is key that we can do away with these concerns, and the Köln Messe has talked with the Cologne authorities, with the crisis organizers of the pandemic, and also set a framework. A Be Safe for Business Village was set up in Hall 9 to somehow simulate how trade fairs work, because we want to get people together again in the trade fair. And the framework conditions are there will be broader aisles. We had smaller ones, narrower ones last time, and the entry will different. Ticket registration is going to be different. You could go to the cashier, buy a ticket, pay cash, and then pass the entrance. But nowadays you will have to register online, so we have a contactless entry and access for everybody, but also traceability options should there be a COVID-19 case in our fairgrounds. So, of course, you can still buy a ticket on the spot, but you need to use your smartphone for that purpose, and it can also be used for scanning purposes. So we also installed a new FSB app, and contacts can be safeguarded. So it's not only for traceability, but also for using contacts in a follow-up approach. 3G is, of course, also important. So either I've recovered from COVID-19, I'm tested, or I'm vaccinated. In Cologne, we have a very comprehensive test center network, like in many other cities. But should I go to Cologne tomorrow, and I can also test, have a test from home and bring along a test certificate. We'll see how developments are going to be on. As from Monday, we can also have a digital vaccination certificate that might be integrated in the ticket app, so maybe we can integrate it in one app. We're about to develop that with our IT department. You also addressed this new app, the FSB app, and I think there will also a possibility to somehow control visitors' flows. Yes, it's really important because eating, drinking is important on a trade fair, and catering areas will be conceived in a different way, but we also have some areas for people when they want to queue. And depending on how many people are on some special spots, we might send a colleague to some house and then somewhere else, separate them, or send a push message and say, well, there is something interesting going on in a different hall. Maybe you want to go there. I can't just check where is Dr. Kannewischer, but I can check the number of people. But for the one or other, it might be interesting if they wanted to talk to you, Dr. Kannewischer. We've heard it. There are many tools that can support you to make everything safe and sound and stress-free. What is the current situation, and how is FSB developing concerning exhibitors? I mean, do you see that people are somehow hesitant, or is everybody happy to come back? So I can say most people are really happy to come back. They're looking forward to meet, to get going again, and there is also need for catch up with what has been missed in the past. I think we're all looking forward to that, and we're meeting here. It's so nice, and of course, it's quite different than just working virtually. And of course, my business can develop in a different way if I am physically on the spot. But I must say our sales and distribution process was quite extraordinary because insecurities were prevailing. But now we are looking on lower incidence rates, and we're all in one boat. That's my motto. So exhibitors and trade fair organizers, and as organizers, it is our role to inform everybody, to overcome concerns. So when it comes to the registration, let me also say that when we have visitors from beyond Europe, we have a more restrictive registration behavior because there are still some travel restrictions. Some companies may not even know whether they can travel or not. And we have a 3 months cancellation deadline. So 3 months before the trade fair, people can renounce from their contract. And if they say, okay, I have to go in quarantine for 4 weeks, then they can still cancel their contract. So you're flexible, you have renowned exhibitors. Of course, yes, market leaders, and I'd also draw your attention to the press kit with a list of exhibitors where you can check who is participating, and by end of this month, it will be online as well. Dr. Kannewischer, we would like to integrate you in our discussion. Thank you very much for being here again. And IAKS is the ideal partner of this trade fair. And considering the 12, 15 months in the past in retrospective, they were very difficult for the industry, weren't they? Of course, it was a very challenging period. All sports facilities and areas were almost closed, so sports was only possible in the public space, and this reinforced the tendency that has been prevailing for quite some time. There were countries where you really were enclosed in your home, and this revealed how important it is to go for sports, to be moving, to be outside, and this is quite important. The sports facilities with high fixed costs have seen a major challenge that hasn't been seen ever before. There were many subsidies available, and I would like to express my gratitude to the public support from the government, but sometimes the subsidies arrived late and the liquidity for sports operators couldn't be kept up so easily. So when looking into the past, but also into the present, this is definitely true. But when looking into the future, what is the planning into the future when it comes to sports facilities? And in particular, there were subsidies not only invested in public sports facilities, but also in so many areas and industries. I mean, talking about the amounts concerning subsidies, would you be afraid that the sports area might not be a focal point? Well, we still have a lot of construction work being done. The construction industry hasn't suffered at all, but these major expenses by governmental bodies had their impact, and financial viability is, of course, a key aspect for us and will remain so in the future, not only when it comes to investments, but also when it comes to capex for operation. But sustainability will continue to play a role. I mean, climate change has only slightly been interrupted by the COVID-19 confinements, and sustainability will remain increasingly important. And this is why IKS has a theme: developing healthy and sustainable communities. And not only healthy in terms of physical health, but also financial health. And we will talk about the IAKS Congress later on, but maybe we can also talk about these things in concrete terms, because you were talking about different elements that will have to be taken into account when really organizing sports facilities. How will that look in the future? As I already said, public space will become increasingly important. That means we will have to concentrate on a network of sports agencies, urbanists, architects, and all have to be incorporated. They have to think sports and build sports facilities at the same time. But then it also means that people want to go for a 24/7 sports activity. And on the other hand, we have sports facilities that are existing and that might be refurbished now and will have to be opened again, especially when it comes to high-performance sports. They need to be open for popular sports so that it can also be exercised when it's raining, for example. So individuals want to do sports inside and outside, and popular sports will definitely be the story of the future. And then we also have inactive people. We have to get them back into sports, attract them, and this is only possible if we have plug-and-play offers. They don't want to learn and exercise for ages, but basically they want to get started right away. This means that we need sports with little hurdles and barriers. And last but not least, as I said before, social integration by sports and leisure time facilities will play a major role in the future as well. And this comprises one aspect or two aspects. We want to include all classes, but also include all people in society. When talking about this October trade fair and thinking of these subjects, what can we expect on FSB? FSB is one of the trade fairs with a very comprehensive framework program, and Mr. Kannewischer has already said it. We're working on these subjects with IAKS and with all our partners that support us. Let me just mention some. So you will find everything on our webpage, of course. So we will talk about urbanism, then sports in the interior and in outdoor space, which is important for sport clubs and cities. Then we have a sports network to attract new exhibitors, which is a nice thing for us. But then it's also a win-win situation because they come up with novelties for the trade fair. And let me advocate this. We're here to share our knowledge with journalists and visitors. Take your time to really look through the Congress and event program. It is really exciting. Stay a day longer in Cologne if you want, if you can, because we have such a broad program. And going back to what we just mentioned, I've realized that in the 18 months in the past, life has changed and everybody has had to look for different areas to exercise because gyms were closed. And this change will remain. But these are the subjects that we've already addressed. And this is what is important for cities and this is what we find besides all the exhibitors' booths. And besides that, Cologne in general is always worth traveling. So, of course, it's nice if people want to stay 2 days longer. And now we have a transition because a city that is worthwhile traveling is Halle. And this is where we have another visitor who will join us in our interview, the Vice President of Popular Sports of the German Olympic Sports Confederation, Andreas Silbersack, who is with us live from Halle. Thank you very much for joining us. Good morning, Mr. Königsmann. I would like to say hello to Mr. Kannewischer and Mr. Pullman. We already learned about it. We don't only want to advertise Cologne as a nice location. Halle is always worth traveling, isn't it? Of course, no question. I mean, I studied in Bonn in the Rhineland. I know Cologne, but of course I'd like to advertise for Halle, so great cities, and Cologne is much bigger, of course, than Halle is. You just followed our discussion, and we also got some insights into the fact that, thank God, FSB will take place, and under particular COVID-19 restrictions, and this had, of course, an impact on sports. And of course, you were also impacted in the German Olympic Sports Confederation. What is your point of view when it comes to sports clubs? What has developed changed in Germany and also over the globe in the past months? What were your impressions? Well, thank you very much for your question. Let me just say one thing first. When listening to what Dr. Kannenwischer and Mr. Pollmann said, I realized that, well, there were some events taking place in FSB 2019, an outstanding trade fair revealing the trends and tendencies that are available with international players everywhere, showcasing sports in the future, as well as, for example, synthetic turf. So thank you very much for organizing the 2019 trade fair, and 2020 was cancelled, 2021. I'm looking forward so much to it. And with COVID-19 and all the issues of development into the future, challenges and whatsoever, it's going to be a particular trade fair. And I think everybody is so much looking forward to it, and there are so interesting things that will be going on. I mean, COVID-19 is something that we're all involved in, and of course, sports clubs were impacted by it. We have 90,000 sports clubs and 27 million members, and being non-movers for over a year, we realized what happens from small sports clubs to the leading ones, and we also realized that this lack of movement led to the fact that there were health problems occurring, and we realized that club members weren't adhering the club, especially for kids and youngsters. It is so important to be sportive, to exercise. And of course, we are a federal organization, and we have quite a diversity of figures from the Federal Sports Confederation federations that are our members. But we can say that there are much less adherences nowadays in sports clubs, and from 1 million, we have lost 1 million members, and this is quite an outrageous number considering this individually. But let me also say that during COVID-19, the solidarity amongst sports clubs really increased, and the social value over sports clubs revealed quite a different importance besides digitization. This was also key. So sports clubs during COVID-19 developed into the future and had to adapt, had to reorient its strategies, and this is also true for the way you're exercising. I mean, everybody knows, I mean, what can I do if I can't play handball, football, whatever? I mean, if I have to go for contactless exercises, you are entirely right. Things are more individualized, and this is why, let's say, looking at the Tennis Confederation or outdoor sports that have, of course, a growth in members. So there is no homogeneous development. It is very diverse. And of course, this is also a challenge into the future, as well as for FSB. I mean, what can be an incentive? I heard, okay, plug and play offers something easy, an easy exercise. This is a challenge.
Was kann der DOSB tun, diesem Trend vielleicht auch ein Stück weit noch mehr entgegenzuwirken oder den Vereinen dazu helfen, dass sich das
trend to go in the right help the trend to go in the right direction? What can DOSB do? Well, our job obviously is to make offers to people, and we've always said during that whole corona time sport is ready. We have counter concepts, we have guidelines that clearly explain how sport can happen safely under pandemic conditions. So we have always been in communication with our member organizations, and we basically wanted to have the framework conditions for this and to basically have this forward and express it vis-a-vis the political field. People do need sport, they do need movement, they do need an incentive. I mean, we started model projects, we have tried to do this on lots of different levels, local authority level, federal, state level, national level, but it wasn't easy, as you can imagine. I mean, that the pandemic was everywhere. And we've really tried to bring these things forward, and now, at a time in a situation where we see things are happening, there is more leeway again. There it is that the DFB with this campaign, getting out is an absolute must, that we really work on this campaign together with all our membership organizations, where we'll say, we have to make sure that we have to get people moving again, because I think that is going to be key. Because one aspect certainly goes in the direction of health. I mean, if you have young people or people who feel young, if you lose those and they no longer do sports, then this basically means we have more obese people, people with heart difficulties, coronary diseases, and restrictions of mobility. So basically, do you remember that Get Fit campaign, Trimm dich, we called that in Germany 40 years ago, where we basically tried to give an impulse for the society as a whole to say, this is important for all of you to do. And we want to do exactly that, motivate people to adopt a healthy lifestyle. Yes, that's right. The one thing is the motivation, you're absolutely right. But the other thing is that we basically need to have a modern, appealing movement infrastructure that is inviting. And the whole thing obviously has repercussions for urban planning, district planning. And this is another important topic, because what do you think such a modern movement infrastructure or movement-inducing infrastructure will look like? Could you give us some examples? Yes, of course. The pandemic has clearly shown and that FSB as a trade fair really is right at the center of things, because they are looking at all questions around sports facilities of today and tomorrow, and to how can we get people into these facilities who are not coming as yet. And for clubs as such, it is important that we have sustainable facilities, and but when I say sustainable, I mean in each and every direction, so that we basically think about it already when we're restructuring or refurbishing. Now, how can we think in a better way about buildings so that basically we have buildings that have a roof, but they don't have fixed walls. We have a more mobile concept. I think this is also interesting when it comes to the question of sustainability, using renewable energies. All those questions obviously play an important role also for sports facilities of tomorrow, if I may call them that. But it also means that urban developers think about this early and timely. This question as to, can urban development make clear space for sports and sports facilities? We actually really need to make sure that those two become more interrelated, that things aren't just separated. The city on the one hand and the sport facilities on the other hand, it has to become one, and that needs to be true for the national, the federal, and the municipal level. And I think there Germany has some leeway to make up. If I think about more southern countries, there it is normal that sports facilities in public schools are also open for people to use openly at weekends or during holidays. That's not yet the case in Germany. We have lots of jobs to do, and I'm sure FSB is going to be an attractive showcase to find answers for these questions. Mr. Silbersack, thank you very, very much for this insight and the exciting impulses that you've given and the many topics you have addressed. Please do us the favor of staying a little bit longer, that we can possibly come back to you in a moment. Yes, I mean, you have already addressed it, and that is a topic that is discussed a lot, and it plays a role at FSB this year, and that is the idea of synthetic turf and microplastics. And there, FSB has always been a lead place to discuss such topics, and it is very important that everybody is well informed on this, and that, for example, the industry can actually help us to understand what needs to be known about this. I had an interview on that topic with Stefan Diederichs. He is the CEO of the ESTC, the EMEA Synthetic Turf Council.
Sehr goed. Sehr goed, dank u schön.
I think we are going to talk in English today, because that would be much more easier for everyone, I think. So first of all, I'm very happy to have you here, and I think it would be very kind if you give us a short introduction. Who is ESTC? Who's the members of ESTC? What's your strategy? What's your vision?
Okay, well, thank you very much for the question. ESTC stands for the EMEA Synthetic Turf Council, and EMEA stands again for Europe, Middle East and Africa. So in short, we are the industry association for the synthetic turf industry in the whole of Europe, Middle East and Africa, which means that everybody who is active in the turf industry, the synthetic turf industry, can become a member of our organization. It starts with the polymer producers, like Total, for example, but then also we have the yarn producers, the Sport Group in Germany, the Tenkate in Holland, many others, and also the tufting companies, the turf producers, installation companies, all the way down to also recycling companies, which are becoming more and more important nowadays compared to the past. So everybody who is active in synthetic turf is a member of our organization. Now, what do we do? Our vision is to be the voice of the industry. So we represent all these companies to the outside world. Ranging from sports governing bodies, who are also members of us, but also towards the European Commission. We can speak on behalf of the whole industry. Now, in our strategy, we have 4 pillars that are very important for us. We start with knowledge. We try to collect all the information about the industry, about the products that are being supplied, and we try to provide some guidance to the outside world, especially to the end users, about what they can expect about the products being supplied by our industry. Secondly, the pillar is advocacy. The knowledge that we gather, we try to provide it in an objective manner to the outside world. For example, the legislative bodies like the European Commission, but also the national legislative bodies. And then, of course, we have marketing, the third pillar, by which we promote the industry, of course, very important. And also we try to explain to the people what our industry has been doing. And then, for most people, the most fun part is networking. We try to link all the members together, and together they can work together and make better products, better connections, work together towards a better future. So that's in short what we're focused on, and one key element that we have implemented in our strategy is environmental care. As you are probably aware, we have entered the environmental era, and focusing on the environment has become of crucial importance to everybody, and certainly also for the synthetic turf industry.
Mm-hmm. So we have to talk about the environmental care a little later. First of all, I think you've been very successful in your work the last 25 years. The synthetic turf industry has been growing very rapidly. So what do you think? Will the synthetic turf replace all of the natural grass in the world, in Germany, in Africa? What do you think?
No, certainly not, and that should not be the intention. As you make a walk in the park, it will be very strange to see all synthetic turf over there. Actually, synthetic turf is of a lot of added value, but given certain conditions. Natural grass can be fantastic, but in certain regions, mainly climatic conditions are as such that it's not the perfect solution, and there synthetic turf can help. So every time when synthetic turf is being installed, it is because it has an added value. For example, if you look at climatic conditions, sometimes it's too cold, sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too wet, and sometimes it's too dry. In all of those circumstances, it makes it very difficult for natural grass to grow. And on top of that, it's of course the player intensity. If a field, for example, a football field, is being used from the early in the mornings till late in the evenings, and natural grass just won't hold up, and they need synthetic turf, especially in cities like Berlin, Amsterdam, the bigger cities. There will be a huge shortage of fields if the fields that are there now in synthetic turf would have to be replaced by natural grass. There would be a shortage of about 75% in certain cases. So replace all the natural grass in the world? Certainly not. But providing added value and helping out and providing advantages to the end user, certainly yes.
So you already mentioned the environmental care. What's your strategy in this part of your activities in the ESTC? Perhaps according also about the discussion about microplastics.
Yes. Well, it's important to realize that we have entered the environmental era. And environment is just not an option anymore. Taking care of the environment is not an option, but it's a necessity. And we realize that we are having a plastics product, and people think, well, plastic is bad. I don't believe so. Plastic in a number of cases is the ultimate solution, which actually helps the environment. But there are always side effects of a product that you produce. One element that you mentioned before is microplastics. Indeed, we cannot deny that the infill being used, the synthetic turf, sometimes ends up outside of the field in the environment, and that needs to be prevented. And there are a lot of actions that you can take to keep the infill inside the field, like side barriers, runoff mats, things like that, but the infill has to be kept inside the field. It's very important. And the clubs and installation companies can do quite a bit, and also the maintenance companies, to keep that in the field. Now, in a broader perspective, we also work on a PEFCR project. And that is a project, kind of a life cycle analysis. And the end result of that project is a kind of comparable to an energy label that you see with household appliances. And that will allow the end users to compare one product against another product. And the most environmental friendly product will then gain more points and a better classification, which makes it very easy for the end user to make a decision, not just on price, but also the environmental impact. And we believe there will be a strong positive element to help the end user make the right decision in which the environmental care is included.
So please, at last, please tell me, what is your expectation of the FSB show that you are participating as an exhibitor? What do you think?
Well, it's going to be an interesting year. I'm not quite sure what to expect hopefully at the end of the Corona situation. Perhaps all kind of screens, all kind of things. But separate from that, we strongly hope that we can have a networking event again to bring all the people of the industry together, explain about our activities, not just to our own members, but also to other visitors coming to the exhibition, and of course have a chat together and help the industry forward. So we hopefully have the first in a long time event where we can see people face to face again.
Yeah, hope so. Mr. Diedrichs, thank you very, very much. Stay healthy.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Ja, vielen Dank für diese interessanten Einblicke.
Yes, thank you very much for these interesting insights. Thank you very much again. I mean, as I said, we taped this conversation 2 days ago because unfortunately under Corona givens, we can't all be in the studio here. And that is why we have swapped people here, and we've now got Klaus Meinl here, and he is the Secretary General of the International Association of Sports and Leisure Facilities, IAKS. We've just heard that Mr. Diedrich has said synthetic turf, microplastics is a huge topic. Possibly that's one we should continue with. Is that a topic that will be hotly discussed at FSB? Yes, of course, because that is a very important topic of not just for manufacturers, but also for those using synthetic turf. Now, at the moment, there is the EU Commission is talking about a ban on synthetic turf products. But it is about improving the environmental side of synthetic turf. All manufacturers want that, and lots of things are being done left, right, and center. I find it very important that we talk about quality standards here. Not all operators, not all users need the absolutely best top product. I mean, it depends upon the scenario that we're talking about for use. But we're also talking about the preconditions that an operator has. And he's also just said not any application lends itself to synthetic turf. You know, when I said, should we fit the whole word with synthetic turf, he said, no, that would be silly. No, I mean, synthetic turf are perfect for urban areas, densely populated scenarios where utilization is very strong, hard, and ongoing. I think Mr. Pollmann has already talked about the very comprehensive framework program of FSB, and we want to take a closer look here. Because IAKS also organizes the conference program, the Congress at FSB. Do you want to share a few highlights with us here? Yes, of course. We are organizing our Congress for the 27th time. Since 1969, we've been doing this, and this year is the development of healthy and sustainable communities. What this means is that how can local authorities or municipalities create the conditions for the people living there to have a good quality of life and people become more active, whilst at the same time being sustainable with what they're doing. Then another interesting aspect for FSB, yet again downright a tradition, is the architectural award that is being handed out, and that is also part of this huge, interesting framework program that we'll have there. So just very quickly, what's hiding behind this award? But before you answer, let's just very quickly look at what we see here, so that we know what this is all about.
Sensible sustainability and innovation.
Strong functional planning.
Exceptional architectural design.
Does this sound like your project?
The world's most important international architecture prizes for sports, leisure and recreational facilities.
Organized by the International Olympic Committee, the International Paralympic Committee, and the International Association for Sports and Leisure Facilities.
May it be the small neighborhood facility or the building for large-scale events.
Indoors and outdoors.
Wet and dry.
From anywhere in the world.
The jury of international experts will honor design concepts for transforming communities and urban areas into places of active living.
The IOC IX Prize was a very crucial kind of moment within BIG's history, where one of our smallest projects, the Copenhagen Harbor Bath, actually received the recognition, and I think brought that tiny little project to the world's attention. That's also the opportunity that we give to all of these great projects that actually submit to the prize, is to give them the kind of exposure that they really deserve.
Ja, ein kleiner Appetizer.
a small appetizer for all those who would like to have their share in this competition. But maybe we can have a more detailed look on what this is all about. What kind of award is this and what will be going on in October? We've already heard about it in the trailer. It's about reasonable sustainability and innovation when it comes to exercising facilities and their reasonable planning, outstanding architectural design, and it is crucial for us to show the experts what the innovative models are that promote innovative thinking and modernizing open-air sports and exercising facilities, make them more appealing. This is the purpose of the award, and this is why the IOC and the International Paralympics Committee are having their share. We have 86 applicants, meaning operators and architects have had their share, and we also have an award for students and young professionals. Here we have 44 applications from 12 countries, and we're very much looking forward to all these design ideas. We'll have the committee conference, and we're looking forward to the award, the live award on 26 October in Cologne, and we're all looking forward to a trade fair without major restrictions in a very relaxed and comfortable as well as safe atmosphere. At the same time, the IAKS Congress is planned in virtual shape. So why is that? Well, I can say that we do hope that many people come to Cologne, will be capable of traveling to Germany in terms of a business trip. But on the other hand, we want to be safe and sound. There might be some situations where people can't travel, they don't want to travel for various reasons. And for this circle of experts, we would like to offer our Congress in a virtual way via a special platform. FSB and IAKS Congress are, of course, international events, and we might even give them quite a higher reach with this virtual organization. It is true, and we're also realizing that virtual conferences work very well, and I highly appreciate it. Thank you very much for your talk, Mr. Meinl. And now we will swap again in the studio. So we have to fight with this, not only that press conferences can not be carried out with all our journalist visitors, but it's still a virtual event. But no matter, but we're getting closer to a conclusive round, and now we're welcoming again Dr. Kannewischer and Mr. Pollmann. Welcome back. And I'm really delighted that Mr. Silbersack and Mr. Meinl are also joining us here. And let me tell you that you can still ask your questions. Please send them in via email. Should there be anything unclear, should you need some room for discussion, fsb.press@Cologne-Messe or fsb-Köln-Messe.com for foreign participants. We're looking forward to answer your questions, but let me ask one to this important circle of experts. We were talking about those things that were difficult or working well in the pandemic. And let me ask you, what do you think? What can and what will we have to learn? What are the lessons learned, and how will we have to get ready for the future, or maybe even for future crises? Let's start with Dr. Kannewischer. Well, of course, public space is getting increasingly important as an addition to sports, inside sports and exercising facilities. So public spaces and public sports areas need to be more generous, but inside there might be good ventilations that are definitely a need. Mr. Silbersack, what do you think? What will we have to learn from the pandemic so things run smoothly in the future? Of course, we need to have scientifically proven hygiene concepts for the future that are viable, but we will also have to see what will be the sports facility of the future. We just heard that we don't want to have too much penetration of people. There might be new ventilation options, so technical novelties and sustainability are key issues here. It is a challenge for manufacturers, for the trade fair, but it's also exciting. I'm looking forward to it so much. Mr. Meidel, what can you add on this subject? Let me go back to urban spaces, urban sports spaces. So users are massively benefiting from them, but they're not available for everybody and anybody. And urbanism is key here. So urban development needs to contribute to building more sports facilities. And of course, users have active and passive users may have different interests. And of course, there needs to be some planning in terms of urban architecture. Mr. Pollmann, what does Kölnmesse think? What do we have to improve into the future? I think the last 18 months were the best training for crisis management, I must say. We really learned a lot. It was outrageous, but it was positive that digitization was boosted, and IAKS is a hybrid format nowadays, and we can even maybe attract more visitors. And I realize that I have to register everywhere where I want to go swimming or doing sports and exercising, also like swimming last year. This will remain, and something positive is also that such a crisis also helps us to get closer in cooperation with our partners, with our exhibitors. So we're all sitting in one boat in order to organize FSB. And a general question I'd like to ask is, when looking into this year, October, and okay, if the trade fair was starting next day, what would you wish for? What would be your expectation of the trade fair? Dr. Kanovich, well, there were so many video conferences carried out for IAKS, and it was really great to have a good exchange of experts that is in the foreground. But of course, emotion is lacking and personal exchange is missing. And we're so much looking forward now to have some informal networking and all the conferences and the entire conference and trade fair program. And we're looking so much forward to that. That's what I think. But I hope it's not only via this registration and tracking app to see where everybody is, which will not trace you, of course. No, just a joke. Mr. Silbersack, what would you expect from FSB in October, besides the fact that you might come back to your academic past? Well, the next months, we are trying to see how we can make people exercise, and I expect from FSB some ideas, some incentives and ideas for implementation of organizing sports in parks, in cities, in urban areas, indoor sports areas. So when it comes to ideas, I think nowadays organized sports clubs can interact with FSB and maybe come up with quite new ideas, fostering projects and interlinking everything. And Mr. Meidel, what would you expect from FSB in October? Well, I can only agree with what Mr. Silbersack said. We are looking for a lot of momentum for the industry, the trends, the tendencies. We're living in a universe that has been subject to major change, and our room for action has changed, and we need some recommendations of how to continue into the future. Mr. Pollmann, tomorrow it would get going. Would you just breathe through? and be happy. If it was starting tomorrow, I would be really stressed. I wouldn't breathe through, maybe in the beginning. But once it's getting started in October, we're looking forward to just open the doors of the Cologne Trade Fair. And I think I'm expressing what everybody thinks in our team, like Bettina Frias. And we're looking so much forward also to see people that we couldn't see for 2 years and having a Cologne beer, keeping the distance, of course. And as the preceding speaker said, some impetus on how sports exercise can take place in the future. It is a very thrilling and exciting subject. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. So far, so good. So this, I wouldn't say it was the official part, but it was actually the press conference on FSB on October. And I already mentioned it. We would like to answer questions that you sent via email, and some already arrived. First question, addressing Mr. Pollmann. And I do think, well, you don't dare believe that a trade fair will be organized. The question is, will it take place? We said yes, but maybe you can overcome people's concerns. I mean, there are different scenarios how it can come across. Of course, the first thing is that, well, we have the agreement. We are below 50. We are far below 50 in a positive sense. We can carry out trade fairs. Also important to mention is, first of all, you have to be either vaccinated, covered from COVID-19, or tested negatively. But now we're also supporting travel scenarios. We've got the 3 months cancellation rule, and we also support exhibitors when getting their visa. Like, for example, should they need visa for traveling, on our webpage you find a hotline, you find forms that we fill in to say, okay, this is our exhibitor. And for visitors and exhibitors, you have different restrictions than for people who just want to travel for holiday. If there are individual questions on restrictions, because we have our foreign representatives in foreign countries, so of course we will have to analyze individual cases because rules are subject to change. But let me also stress that with our Be Safe for Business rules, we have the highest possible security that everybody can have. So you may feel entirely safe, because if rules are stick to, and this is actually observed and closely monitored to separate crowds or whatever, so we can make sure that everything will be safe in October. Okay, next question. Going back to exactly that, you almost answered it. Can international visitors come to Cologne and participate? Of course, as you just said, when it comes to getting a visa, filling in forms, Köln Messe will be supportive, and we do not know how travel restrictions will be like in October. That's true, but when it comes to the preparation, I would really recommend people, well, register before. You may have a QR code, everything is installed on your mobile phone, get tested either before you travel to Cologne. You can also have yourself tested in Cologne. And we have a big test center just next to the Cologne Trade Fair. So you can just go there before visiting the trade fair. And basically, all rules apply as usual and will apply as applicable in that situation. But contact us if there is any question, or address our foreign agencies. There are more questions. A more dedicated question on the registration process for visitors with a view to COVID-19. How will registration work? You need the app. So use your smartphone, but this is a standard, isn't it? But should there be an issue, let us know. You need to install the app to the FSB app and register with the QR code. And you need your QR code everywhere. So should an exhibitor want to scan a visitor, this can also be done via this QR code. And we also need a certain traceability. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we said every exhibitor needs to scan every visitor. This is no longer the case. We need to know who was on the fairground at what time and on which date. This is what we need to know. So it's not that everybody will have to be scanned each and every minute, but it can also be used as a visitor or as an exhibitor just to scan people, because at the end of the day, this generates a list to see who did I meet and who would I like to contact later on. But it is also important, install the app, register beforehand. This will save time, and then everything can be done contactless depending on the weather. Handing in your wardrobe, you'll get a little ticket. You can then walk through the trade fair without your coat, without your jacket, and everybody will now say, "Can I scan you?" Something new. I've got a different question now, and please let me know who would like to answer it. The restrictions and confinement of the past months impacted not only professional sports, but also exercises outside. Outdoor areas were less impacted than indoor areas. From your point of view, will city offers, communal offers be changing, or would you rather say that business as usual will come back? So would you expect that planning for urban areas will change, and if so, what will change? Yes, let me just answer the question. Maybe you want to add on it. So as I said before, we all realized how important the public space is for sport, and this is a trend and tendency that we've seen in the past years as well. In German-speaking areas, things have not necessarily changed so much, but there is a high pressure and the awareness that you could only exercise in public spaces. It means that we have to come up with multifunctional sports areas in outdoor facilities, and I would wish for new tendencies. I would wish that exactly this aspect would be incorporated in urban planning. So things need to change in order to open up open spaces for sports facilities. And maybe Mr. Silbersack would like to add on that. Yes, with pleasure. Thank you very much. Well, of course, things will have to change. I mean, there is a saying that if you're not updated, you will never be capable of catching up. And when there were some construction plans, urban construction plans, it did usually not involve exercising and clubs. But now I think planning needs to be carried out in cooperation with sports clubs and federations, in particular on the backdrop of the pandemic that we experienced. Sports in parks, sports in urban areas, protection from noise needs to be ensured, but also this needs to be carried out on a federal and on a governmental level. And I think the major task for the future will be to foster this interlinkage and also request from political decision makers that sports becomes an aspect that is crucial for everybody.
Thank you very much indeed. It's obvious there's a lot to do. Well, what can we take away from this one-hour press conference for FSB 2021? Deposit for FSB, it will take place. It will take place under specific rules, and not as we are all used to, but in an attractive way anyway. The pandemic really has challenged us dramatically, and Mr. Pollmann said we had training in crisis management, but I can hear that you feel very optimistic that this can lead to a new approach in thinking and planning and designing things, particularly public sports facilities. Gentlemen, I would like to thank you very much indeed for having been here. Dr. Kanigis, Mr. Meine, Mr. Diedrichs, Mr. Silbersack. I would like to thank all of you for having been here today. And I hope you stay safe and healthy, and we'll meet in October in beautiful Cologne for a great FSB 2021. Take care and see you then.